Enter elevator music. Do, 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 do. Oh. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this month's installment of Blueprints for Business, sponsored by Fordly, hosted by my good friend here, Richard, as well. Richard, how the heck are you today, sir?
Oh my goodness, it's been a great week. I have to tell you, we had one of the best sessions that we've ever had in Roundtable Labs this week, where we talked about all kinds of brain things, meaning the things that get in your way and lie to you and just take you out of your game. I'm getting ready for two conferences
Is
right
it over
now.
on the bottom?
Mhm.
Wait, check it.
Sorry, we'll
I,
get
th I think we just had a hot mic. So you're getting ready for two conferences, you said.
two conferences. I'm most excited about the tax retreat conference and then Bridging the Gap, which is 2 days after that. I'm very excited about the tax Twitter retreat. They asked me to speak last second. I'm behind. I still owe them a poster and a slide deck and a couple of other things, and it was due on Wednesday. But other than that, it's been a great week. So working on that, bought some time, and I'll be getting that. So but I have packed and unpacked twice already. So for those
Only
of you that
twice?
know
Okay.
me, that's one of the most important things about going to a conference, is picking the right shoes. And that's what I've been working on. So
Nice.
yeah. How about you,
Well,
Matthew? What have you been up to? What's your week been like?
my big win is my puppy dog Sophie took her to the vet. She had some work done and she's doing much, much better. It just makes me a happy camper to kind of share that part of it. So she's down here happy and probably go out for the first walk again in a couple days. She had dental work. We don't like dental work in this house, but it's all good. So,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I avoid the dentist as
yeah.
much as possible, but can't do that.
I did actually post one video today, and then, or I'm sorry, earlier this week. Speaking of Fordly, our sponsors for the show, on my YouTube channel, I'll put a link in everywhere. I did a quick video to show people specifically when you're using Fordly and you send a request out to your clients to get paid, you want to get paid, it shows you what they see and the process they go through. Because I think it's really important that we understand that side of it. So, I'll share that out. I'm really digging forward. And Jane, thank you again so much for sponsoring this as well. Now, Ingrid, we've got an amazing guest host this week. Ingrid Edstrom is a dear friend of mine. I'm super excited to have her on with us and joining us for a special conversation around sustainable and ethical business practices. Ingrid, would you mind introducing yourself and then helping to define what that actually means? Because I bet a lot of us don't understand what that really means.
Sure.
Myself included, very honestly, I'm very much looking forward to hearing about sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we might get to figure some of that on this call because it's a very developing conversation. Hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid Edstrom, and my vision is to make the world a better place built on a foundation of thriving small businesses. And I really enjoy doing that in collaboration with other accounting professionals and through amazing conversations with the Roundtable Labs community. I get to host the Empower Your Passion Roundtable, which we are launching a second iteration of just coming up in a couple of weeks, which is really, really exciting because the first one was full and we needed to make it more opportunities for that to happen a bit more. And I'm also co-founder of the Accounting Alchemy Network, which is a grassroots movement working to turn the accounting profession into a vehicle for positive change in our world. So between those things, it leaves me, just a little bit of time for my coaching practice, where I mostly work with accounting professionals, focusing on the deep inner work, inner game, and in particular on some of the things we're going to be talking about today, which is how can we make it so that our businesses are in alignment with our values? And in order to do that, we have to know what our values are and how we want to show up in right relationship with all peoples and our planet, and understanding how our business fits into that and making sure that we are not sacrificing our deeply held personal values and beliefs on the altar of profit, because that is what our dominant society has trained us to believe that we're supposed to do. So yeah, just, saying, hey, how do we fix this capitalist mess we found ourselves in? It's kind of my jam.
Well, thank you very much for that quick intro as to what this whole conversation is about. And as always, we like to invite everybody to join us on video if you wish to, or I always like to draw attention when you guys see me kind of looking off to the side. It's not that I'm not engaged, I am listening, but I'm also trying to involve those who are watching with us. So if you're watching live, I'm keeping an eye on the comments. Jeff, it's great to see you here as well watching. Mariette, it's great to see you as well. So thank you everybody who's collaborating, joining in for this amazing conversation. So, sustainable ethical business practices, as you just described it. What I've been on different apps. I like to go on Clubhouse quite often, and they'll have some rooms that are talking about this. And I always was confused on exactly what some of it would mean, right? You did a great definition towards it. What if you know, I guess what is one of the best areas where if we are trying to be good stewards in business, what's a good tip or trick you would suggest that people can start to get their feet wet into this realm to be good stewards in business, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so stewards in business, it kind of depends on what you're stewarding. And a big part of what we're talking about in the Accounting Alchemy Network gets into the environmental stewardship. How do we be better members of our planet, recognizing that we are not the only species that lives here? And how can we make it so that we're not killing off everything else for our own private profit and gain? And that can be a little bit more challenging. So let's start a little closer to home with our families, our teams. What does it look like to be a good steward of a business? What does it look like to have a happy, healthy team where everyone is encouraged to thrive in their zones of genius, doing things that they are good at and enjoy, and making sure that people are being paid equitably, and not just having it be about the bottom line of the business. The bottom line is one metric, one KPI. And there are so many other things that we can be tracking that might be more important than just profitability. Of course, profitability, we're all accountants here, is essential for business sustainability. And is it the only important thing? How do we start asking ourselves the bigger questions of what else can we be measuring? And those are some of the big questions that organizations like the Accounting Alchemy Network and Center for Accounting Transformation and others are trying to shed some light on some of those questions so we can start to develop the answers.
So as Richard kind of mentioned in the chat there, this obviously, when you're looking at the bigger, grander picture, right? This is much deeper than just going paperless.
I just saw that comment in the chat
Yeah.
and it cracks me. So this is way deeper than going paperless. Like somehow stopping using paper is going to magically wave a wand and save the world.
Well, so I mean, I think part of the reason that he brought it up, and I'm glad he did, is when we talk about these bigger ideas, it gets scary about like a lot of people, we're just trying to build a business first off, right? And that may be a very selfish view, but we're trying to build a business. How do we figure out where our part of the footprint can be that we can economically afford to keep pushing things forward? Because I can't save the entire world myself today, and I still have to eat and do these different things, but I do want to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, I hope? I mean, what does
It
everybody
does
else
make
feel
sense.
that?
Yeah, and that's one of the big education pieces that we talk about a lot in the Accounting Alchemy Network, and some of the things that we have learned by participating in education programs with the Pachamama Alliance. We've taken many cohorts now of accounting professionals through a course called the Game Changer Intensive that's put on by the Pachamama Alliance. And it really helps us to learn how to have these conversations in more effective, well ways, and recognizing how to cultivate a sense of grounded optimism, recognizing that, yeah, no one of us can make all of these changes in the world by ourselves. And when we're looking at this meta crisis, this gigantic issue of how do we be in better relationship with the world, if we're trying to do it all ourselves, that's not going to work. Well, guess what? Individualism is one of the attitudes and behaviors of institutionalized racism. How do we get past that feeling of individualism that we've been programmed into by our dominant society and learn to be in more effective, healthy interdependence so that we're not having to do this alone? And recognizing interdependence is very different from codependence. For people who are like, oh, I've done that interdependent, you've done the codependent relationship thing. If it left you with a bad feeling, that wasn't healthy interdependence.
Ingrid, can I ask you to break this down
Mhm.
in an even simpler way? Because I am already almost just overwhelmed with, well, does it mean this? Does it mean that? How can we be better? Oh my God, I used a single-use plastic. Am I, eliminating all the work that you're doing? I want to understand what people can do
Yeah.
in a meaningful way, and how again, I want to go down one other slight little path. Karen wrote in the chat, was recently window shopping for better electricity and natural gas rates and came across a company that allows you to purchase green energy, and it would be a business expense. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
But when I hear about buying credits, I feel like I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm saying I can be wasteful. I can be that non-sustainable human as long as I pay this tax over here that says I'm doing better. And there's a difference to this from that. And I want to understand that at a much lower level, like a very layman's human to human term, because you're talking about very big concepts here.
Mm-hmm. They are very big concepts. And in the same way that, hey, learning to be an accountant and the things that we try to explain to our clients, many of which are way over their heads, that it takes time to learn some of these big concepts.
Right.
That's what people hire us for, to be accountants. When we go to the doctor, we don't need to know everything about anatomy and physiology and cellular biology. That's their job.
Right.
It's good to know what things we can be doing in our daily habits to take better care of our bodies so that we don't end up at the doctor as often or we don't make ourselves sick. And those are the kinds of things that we want to kind of start touching on here. Is there's a lot of really big ideas, and the important thing is to start having the conversations and not ignore them just because they're challenging and there's a bit of fear of the unknown, in the same way that we're trying to get our accounting clients to come and have a conversation with us about their business health. And it's like pulling teeth. It can be like pulling teeth, getting people to have these conversations and recognizing that showing up to the learning experience is doing something. That is a huge, important place to start. Just to want to show up and have the willingness to learn and try to figure out what is the next step. Because the marketing in our dominant society has really kind of done a number on us when it comes to, okay, so if I use this single-use plastic, like you just mentioned, Richard, am I going to hell? What's going on here? It's like, there's so much judgment flying around and it's not useful. We need to be able to show up to the conversation in a way that gets the judgment out of the way and makes it so that we can start to learn.
Ingrid, I was at a grocery store 2 days ago, and I don't often go to grocery stores. I became a child of Instacart through the pandemic. But I was at the grocery store. I needed something very quickly. I walked in and I was never so shocked in my life to see bananas, single use, wrapped in styrofoam and then plastic on top of that. I was like, these come in their own wrapper. What are we doing? This is insanity.
Yeah.
So I get it. We need to be better about things like that, obviously. But how do we combat that kind of lunacy where a banana is wrapped up in styrofoam and plastic? And how does that apply to accounting businesses? I'm trying to connect the two ideas.
Oh, Richard, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to talk about, because wrapping those bananas in styrofoam and single-use plastics, that's a huge expense for that business.
Right.
And
Now we're getting
we
to
as accountants are the ones who can communicate to them, hey, did you know that you could actually save this many tens of thousands of dollars a year while being more environmentally conscious? And you as a member of the community can get together with other members of your community to say, hey, this store that we are patrons of, we're going to buy our bananas elsewhere if you keep doing this. So there's two avenues there. One, money talks, and two, money talks that you're going to spend your money elsewhere and they will make more money by doing it in a different way. So we as accounting professionals have freaking magic powers when it comes to being able to change the things that we want to see in the world.
Okay. That's wonderful. So what I just heard was very different than what I heard at the beginning. It was about not just us,
Mhm.
but passing this knowledge downstream to our clients, helping them understand the economic impact sometimes of the ridiculousness. I mean, I fully admit I'm an Amazon consumer, just like I'm an Instacart consumer. And Amazon Prime Day was 2 days ago.
No, it's coming up.
And my Amazon Prime Day for the week,
Oh,
and they
okay.
deliver everything in fewer packages.
I mean,
My-
I know exactly when it is.
This is a
okay?
Richard specific
Yeah.
holiday.
Sorry, my bad.
This is a weekly event at my home because I have a lot of Amazon ordering. I prefer to nest inside my home rather than to ever leave, especially when it's 124 degrees outside. So I am a consumer of many Amazon things. So Amazon sends packages that are already packed, and then they put them in a box, and then another box, and then a plastic wrapper around that. It's like just the amount of recycling that it's generating. There's got to be a better way. Now, there's a little known program of Amazon that's actually kind of helpful that I've been trying to do, because I'm on a spring cleaning kick, donating clothing, shoes, etc. You can refill Amazon boxes and reach out to them, and they will come by, pick up your donations directly at your home. I feel
really
like
cool.
that is a better use of some of those recyclables, because we'd have to box them up anyway,
And
right?
repurposing it. I mean, I just put a whole bunch of boxes in recycling last night, so that would have been a good thing. I wanted to bring in a comment from Facebook because it was something I was thinking about. But Kelly Hollis, phenomenal person as well, met her through Seth's 97 Up. She said, "I think looking to the B Corp movement can help one get started. B Corp principles provide a good roadmap for change." And then it says from their website, "Our most challenging problems can't be solved by governments and nonprofits alone. For-profit businesses play a critical role in shaping our future. B Corps are for-profit companies that meet high standards of social and environmental performance, transparency, and accountability. B Corps use the power of business to do more than seek profit. They use their profits and growth to positively impact their stakeholders and the planet." Nailed it. I was again on Clubhouse just the other night, and B Corps came up and made me research a bit more because I've heard about them forever, but I didn't really understand exactly the distinction or definition or what made them different. So it's still a for-profit, but you have like a point system that you have to hold the business accountable to certain guidelines like pay requirements, a whole bunch of different things to maintain that veil of protection as a corporation. So yeah. Ingrid, are you familiar with B Corps and how they kind of play a role by chance to?
I am a bit. So, an important thing to note about B Corps, it is, like Kelly said, a wonderful step in the right direction. And it's not necessarily the only step, and it's not necessarily a good fit for every single business.
Good point.
So
Good
one
point.
example that I want to give, I grow most of my own food here in Southern Oregon on my little 2-acre farm. I could, if I wanted to, become certified organic. And to what end? What would be the point of me becoming certified organic to grow my own food? And for a little bitty company, becoming a B Corp, jumping through all those hoops, might not be effective. It might not be worth the time and money investment. Nonetheless, like Kelly was saying, looking at what are the standards of a B Corp, and saying, oh, hey, these are some good metrics. These are some good KPIs or OKRs to hold ourselves to. Where do we want to set the bar? What do we want to set our goals for? B Corps are great for that. And you can look at the B Corp standards without necessarily having to become a B Corp. Now, if you want to become a B Corp, go for it, because having that extra stamp of approval of being a certified B Corp on your business can attract more customers who share your values.
Amen. Amen.
Ingrid, we've got a question from Jane from Forwardly that I'd like to call out. I'm very curious about this too, Jane. So she says, Ingrid, I'm curious to know how you feel about conferences and events. Sometimes I feel conflicted at events, seeing the waste that goes into them. Everything from cheap swag to flyers that will be recycled, trash to single-use cups, and even the food is often served in plastic containers. Do you think there's a way that attendees can encourage change? So
Absolutely, there is.
I'd like to add one thing. I did see, and I don't know if it was the same case this year, but 2 years ago in Fort Worth at Scaling New Heights, I was very impressed. They gave out reusable water bottles that you could fill up at any water station in the building. The only part that kind of drove me crazy is I was like, I don't want to use this because I haven't washed it yet, because I'm very much that person. And so I was like, what do I do? And so it took me a little while to get upstairs, wash it, didn't have a bottle brush, all the things, but I was still very impressed that this was the first time, and I've been to over 100 accounting conferences, that just reusable water bottles were put in play, which I think was a great step. Now, at the same time, we had all the plastic badges, lanyards, paper inserts, business cards, etc. They get thrown away or shoved into a briefcase until the next year. I've started along my own journey. I stopped buying business cards years ago. What do? Well, I put a QR code on my phone wallpaper and let people get my information that way. It's the easiest, most accessible, and it's immediately in their phone. They don't have to scan it into a program, push it into their CRM, and then push contacts over to their phone. So it's easier all the way around from a carbon standpoint as well as a paper standpoint. What other ways, and now, sorry, I monologued a little bit there, I apologize. What ideas do you have for conferences, Ingrid?
Well, I think the most important part of Jane's message there was the what can we do to, do you think there is a way that attendees can encourage change? That was where she ended the question. And the answer is absolutely yes. In the same way that I was on a Woodard call just earlier this week with the Woodard trainers and instructors, and it was kind of a bit of a Scaling New Heights recap. And one of the first pieces of feedback that came through from this group of instructors that are in the Woodard community was the panel that was there on diversity, equity, inclusion was amazing. And this must be on the main stage next year. We need to be talking about diversity, equity, inclusion on the main stage of conferences. It cannot be put off any longer. This is a really important issue. Why are we not talking about this on the main stage? And it's feedback like that to the conference organizers. They hear us. And justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, or as we like to call it, JEDI in the Accounting Alchemy Network realm, is one of the main things that we can be doing to create more sustainable and ethical business practices. How do we be more inclusive?
I want to dig into that because those are two very different topics. I don't see the connective tissue. I want to understand how justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion are tied into saving the planet. They're both amazing causes, but I'm not seeing the connection.
So one of the main things that I got to learn through the education programs that I attended with the Pachamama Alliance that we are now rolling out through the Accounting Alchemy Network is how our climate crisis and the social justice crises are inextricably intertwined to create a climate justice emergency. And what it comes down to is that the people who are using the most, wasting the most, hoarding the most money and resources are disproportionately impacting the people who are creating the least harm in the planet, primarily in the global South, but even here in the United States, when we have, trash that needs to go somewhere, and when you throw something away, guess what? There's no such place as away. It needs to go somewhere. And often it is going into the neighborhood of someone who cannot afford to live someplace nicer, that they have to live by the dump because they don't have the means to live somewhere else. And that creates unhealth. There's layers and layers of how harm is being perpetuated by essentially a caste system in our society that Isabel Wilkerson wrote about really effectively in her book Caste, which they made a film about last year. The film Origin is about the writing of that book. There's so many amazing resources out there. I want to circle back around briefly to Jane's question, though, just to finish off that loop, because I noticed a tangent. I was using the Jedi example that came up in Woodard to show that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. When the attendees of the conference say, we want justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion on the main stage, that's how we get what we want on the main stage. Similarly, if we want conferences to be more environmentally conscious, hearing from the attendees of these things are wasteful, we want to go about this differently, how can we collaborate with the hotel and figure some of these things out? I mean, Woodard is a fantastic business, and Joe Woodard has such a humongous heart. Those are things that I'm sure they are thinking about, trying to figure out. That doesn't mean they have all the answers. And it takes a community to come up with solutions to these problems. If we propose solutions to them rather than just, you're doing it wrong, this is wasteful, and telling people that they're horrible people because they're trying to figure out how to do this the same as we are, if we can say, hey, what if we did it this way? That creates much better results.
I've always appreciated conferences that say the training materials are going to be available online. I also appreciate vendors who have QR codes that send people to their website, send people to some online PDF information, because let's be honest, there's a lot of cost that goes into being a sponsor at a thing.
Yes.
And then on top of that cost, there's the swag cost, and then we've got to have some kind of brochure or we're not real. And all those things. Now, one of the most egregious ones that I saw was, we've got all of our documentation electronically here on these thumb drives that we're going to be giving out to you, which did the exact opposite. It was worse to buy all the thumb drives and have all that electronic waste out there than it would have been for the paper, because we know that it takes more to create the electronics than it does the paper. And copper doesn't regrow like trees do. So lots and lots of weird mistakes that people are making along the way. And I think what you're saying is be better. We should all be better at talking this out with the people that matter. And a great example, I'm going to go back to Woodard. There was some backlash a couple of years ago. Why are no women on the main stage? Oh, well, we've asked all the women, but none of the women wanted to be here.
They didn't ask me.
And this year we had a woman headliner and a woman's story. And last year we had a woman's perspective and a woman leader on the main stage. So we started to see change through backlash. I think what I'm hearing is Sometimes it's about having the important conversation in a backlash kind of a way. Sometimes it's about reaching out and saying, can we have a conversation? And so it's, what do you think the best avenue is? Is it to reach out to conference organizers, vendors, sponsors, those kinds of things? Or is it to get on social media and be a keyboard warrior about it?
People have different strategies. I prefer the first one by a long shot. I feel like cancel culture is doing a lot to harm people in our culture, and often even making it so that people are afraid to try. Someone, for example, who wants to show up and learn how they can be a better anti-racist ally, and they're trying to figure out how to have those conversations, are so afraid to make a mistake that they're not willing to enter the conversation because they're afraid they're going to get torn up on social media for just trying. And mistakes are going to be made. Harm is going to happen. And what do we do about it when it does? How can we go about things in a way that is healing rather than punishing? Right now, our society is really focused on crime and punishment. And as a result, we have a prison system that is mostly full of people of color who are stuck in a system where the only avenues available to them are related to drugs. And that's not their fault. How do we fix this? How do we heal this? And that's where it gets into the sustainable and ethical business practices, recognizing how the ripples of the choices that we make impact people that can be far-reaching from us, and that we need to be trying to show up and do our best. I am making plenty of mistakes still, and I'm trying to figure it out. And one of my favorite things is, how do we hold these conversations and acknowledge when harm is done in effective, well ways where then reparations can be made? What do reparations look like? So sustainable ethical business practices, you were asking about, right, but is focusing on justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, does that actually have anything to do with sustainable ethical business practices? Absolutely, yes, it does. Because if you have a business where your team does not feel belonging because of the color of their skin or their sexual preference, we've got a long ways to go. If people are afraid to go to work because of the way that their coworkers are treating them, the culture is not effective. Oh, I see hands going up. Yes. It's so important. This is one of the most important things that we can be focusing on, is making sure that people feel safe at work and are doing the work that they enjoy, and that they're allowed to talk about it, that they don't get ridiculed and blamed for bringing up a problem and labeled angry Black woman when there's a problem. It is so not okay that that's going on in our society today. And it starts, please speak up.
Please,
Thank you. Thank you for bringing your voice.
You just spoke to my soul. Leaving corporate America, that was one of the reasons why I left corporate America. For every reason that you said, not feeling like I didn't belong. Not so much as my sexual orientation, but for my home life. Like, I had it thrown up in my face so many times that I had kids, and it was like, really? I'm a woman. That's, I can do that and I can work, and not having a space like this right here is a space that was created for us to have this conversation. You don't have that a lot of times in working areas or working fields, or corporate, especially corporate America. You have very few jobs that are creating a space like this where we could talk about it, talk about the sustainability and the ethical things of business. But I feel like small businesses like us, or me, I can't speak for anyone else, but we can start here. That's one place that we can start.
Yes. Thank you so much, Akeisha. And I also want to call out in the chat, Richard, as I was, just listing off a couple of different things that people can be discriminated for in the workplace. And he said in the chat, just to me, respectfully, and I'm bringing this up with Richard's permission in the chat, respectfully, please say sexual orientation rather than preference. And I'm like, thank you. Because yeah, we're all still learning and we're going to have language slip ups. And I can own that, yeah, I said preference there rather than orientation. And that's something that I need to shift my language and develop new habits around that I'm working on. And so thank you, Richard, for calling it out. And this is what reparation looks like. It's me acknowledging, oh yeah, oops, I said the wrong thing there. And I can make it right. And I can do it publicly in front of everyone listening to this call without it turning into a blame shame game. And we create the space for each other to learn and grow and do that.
I think an important note that you just brought up, though, is I privately said something
Yes.
that you publicly acknowledged.
And you didn't shame me on social media for it.
Right.
So I'm going to interject real quick because I want to bring in some of the comments that that people have been sharing. So Marriott and Kelly have both been very active, expressing how important of a topic this is. Kelly was saying, respect for each other, respect for the planet go hand in hand. Marriott said, I believe deeply in what Ingrid has said. If our house company and company culture is not in order, how can we expect those companies to care about our environment and ethical issues like these? So what I've been taking away from part of this conversation is the idea of the immediate part we have control over is the culture of our companies. So that is the environment we start to make the change. That's the first baby steps of where we make the change. As I always like to try to say, there's certain aspects of my life I feel my responsibility is to try to help the swinging pendulum come to a stop into the center as much as possible. And look, I know I can't stop it, but if I'm a force against the swinging of the pendulum and I can help it bring to center, that's my ultimate goal. Ingrid has alluded to an experience that I personally had, and I will share the outsides of it to keep this very positive. I am always trying to be exact with my words, and I'm always looking for ways to improve myself as an individual. And I had an experience many years ago where I used the wrong language, and instead of the person privately helping me, it was a public shaming scenario, and it was very frustrating. And fortunately, it was, geez, Ingrid, how long ago was it we had the sessions where we talked through a lot of this? It was about 6 months, 9 months ago or something like that.
Oh, it was a little long. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the Jedi primer that we did for Accounting
yeah.
Alchemy.
And that helped a lot. So it's a great session, helped open up my eyes to other perspectives, and has continued to help me try to evolve who I am as a person. So anchor it back to company culture now. That's where we can start to make a change little bit by little bit for the world.
Well, I think that's the most important thing to focus on. It's like Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so often as accounting professionals, we learn to try to find strategic and tactical solutions to issues. But if we're only focused on the strategy and the tactics are the what and strategy is the how. Culture is the why. And if we don't have those strategies and tactics rooted in a solid culture, it's like the effing debate, efficiency versus effectiveness. You can be very efficient at doing the wrong things and you'll go even faster in the wrong direction. If your strategy, and we can't strategize our way out of cultural issues, that just continues to have people feeling unseen, unheard, and it's ineffective. We need to have the culture in place first.
I think we also need to recognize, this goes back to a conversation I've had many, many, many times with people. We'll hear a phrase like, I don't see color, black, white, red, brown, purple. I find that to be one of the most offensive things that anyone could ever say. Akeisha, you're hearing the same thing that I am. You're wiping away somebody's identity when you say, don't see color. Because guess what? I can bet with probably 100% accuracy, Akeisha, the fact that you are Black is a part of your identity.
Very much so.
Absolutely. So why?
So
it's just a food for thought, simple suggestion to start thinking in terms of what are the other people hearing versus what we're saying? The intent is good. I value the intent, but the execution sucks when somebody says that. And I've mentioned that to a few people over the years, and they immediately get it. So it's gently having those conversations and recognizing that people are trying to get better. People genuinely care. Matthew and I have had this exact conversation.
Yep.
I think you said that at one point. Not to call that
Well,
out, but
I was inappropriately, and I learned why I shouldn't make such a comment, even though being colorblind,
yeah,
that
it's
is a
colorblind.
completely different thing. And I no longer, I never make a comment like that anymore because I recognize now, thanks to people like Ingrid, like Richard, Megan Tarnow. I can't tell you guys how many conversations I've had with Megan where I left more intelligent because of the way she approached the conversation with me. And the key to the whole thing was both people were willing to talk and listen and be willing to learn and not immediately assume they knew everything. So
That just gave me
I have
chill
something
bumps.
to learn from everybody. I'm sorry, Akeisha, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I
Go
said
ahead.
that just gave me chill bumps. Like I loved it.
I'm glad. I think it's an important topic, and we're talking about baby steps, but if everybody took those baby steps,
Mhm.
that's what Ingrid, I think what you're really suggesting is it's all the little baby steps that are going to be a big step for the world. And so that's why
Exactly.
you're doing what you're doing, pushing that message out there. So it's not about everybody fixing their firm 100%. It's about one less reusable plastic or one less single-use plastic. It's about one less racism. It's about one less all of the things that are encompassed in to this topic of sustainability. Am I getting?
There's so many pieces to everything. It's, you know, just like any other project or task that we set our minds to, you know, when we're in the midst of tax season and we've got the overwhelming push of everything that needs to be done coming up, do you try to do all of that at once? Or do you prioritize and say, okay, this is the one thing that I can do in this moment today, now, and figure out how to eat that elephant one bite at a time? And if we were constantly overwhelmed by the enormity of the issue, we would just not get out of bed. So let's take it and break it down into individual steps and figure out first, how do we even decide where to start? How do we have the conversation? Well, this right here is how we start. Having this conversation and developing our interest, our curiosity, getting past our fear of failure with it. Oh, am I frozen?
No, you're not, but
No.
I am laughing because I figured you would recognize that thing on my face where I'm like dying to jump in. I'm hearing you talk about sustainability and being better shepherds to the earth. We shouldn't use the example of eating an elephant. Nobody should be eating elephants. Let's just be honest. They're
a tofu elephant,
okay. A tofelephant.
tofu elephant,
That was
yes.
horrible. But yeah,
With a wooden spoon, by the way, no plastic.
internally, I'm giggling because I say that all the time. But then I was like, no, we shouldn't be eating elephants. They're here. They're intelligent. We should not be doing that. All right. Enough of that.
I love what Karen called out in the chat. Cultural norms need to be deleted. People get weirded out and confused by nonconformity. Acceptance should be the new norm. I love that, Karen. That's absolutely beautiful. And I think a good step in the right direction on that is if each of us can just put in a little bit of effort to get past our personal judgments.
Yeah.
And yeah, recognizing that we can still discern what is effective and ineffective for us and try to show up in our best selves. And at the same time, judging each other for choices when each of us is in a different path on our learning growth journey. If we were in that other person's exact circumstances, would we actually make a different choice? How do we know? Have we asked that person what their exact circumstances are? Do we know what they're going through? How about we suspend our judgment and instead reach out with some compassion and support? What does it look like to shift that habit?
That's a
Think
very,
there's-
very big word. Big word. Compassion is
Mhm.
an extremely big word. And it's a very misunderstood word. But I feel like compassion would help a lot of things, especially things within our businesses and within the world. But is that word just is beautiful.
How do you
Jeff was-
define compassion, Akeisha? I always so, and I just looked it up. The dictionary definition is shocking to me
Mhm.
because the dictionary definition is pity and concern.
No,
I don't think
No.
so. I don't
no.
think so either.
To me, compassion, you can't have compassion if you have judgment. If you have judgment, there is no compassion there. To me, compassion means, okay, I may not fully understand what you're going through. I probably never will fully understand what you're going through, but I acknowledge that you saying that this is what you're going through. So it's kind of like an acknowledgement minus judgment, minus a lot of things, but it's like, okay.
I think empathy is also wrapped up in this in a big way.
Mhm.
Imagining yourself
Mhm.
in the other's shoes.
I would if I went through half the things that you went through and try to walk in your shoes, I probably would fold. I probably would never make it, and vice versa. We never know what someone has gone through. This, what we look like. I remember somebody saying, you don't smell like the smoke that you've been through. It's it doesn't look like we all can create this storyline of someone in our heads, but then when it doesn't match up to what we have in our heads, that's when the judgment part comes in.
Mhm.
So compassion is eliminating the storyline.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I want to head over to Karen
also-
here. I want to head over to Karen. She's had her hand raised for a quick moment, so if you don't mind. So
Oh,
Karen.
Well, I raised it when Richard said he looked up the definition of compassion, but to me, simplifying it, compassion and empathy is caring about the other person. I recently had to stay in a hotel in my hometown because my mom passed away and I had to clear out of her home so the lawyer could sort out belongings and whatnot. And when I checked into the hotel, they were being friendly and they're like, "Oh, is this your first visit to Victoria?" Because they were going to sell me on the activities desk. And I said, "No, I actually grew up here." And they're like, "Oh, you don't have anyone to stay with?" And I'm like, "Well," and then I told them my mom had just passed away like 3 days earlier. So he came out from behind the counter, gave me a big hug and gave me his condolences, got me sorted in my room, apologized it was a horrible room because Expedia had oversold the hotel, but he'd work on an upgrade. In the meantime, I get into my room, I'm getting enough out for the night, and someone knocks on the door and they delivered a midnight snack plate to me with a card with their expression of condolences again. And then the next morning, they followed up and said, "Oh, you're in your room. That's great. Do you have 10 or 15 minutes to spare? Could we have another room for you? We've given you a complimentary upgrade." So the room I was in was overlooking the loading bay. Like, yeah, no one wants that room. The room they put me into had this arched picture window that looked out over the inner harbor of Victoria and the Parliament buildings at night, so I could watch the seaplanes coming and going while I was making 1,000 phone calls. And yeah, sorry, Richard, but yeah, they put me in that room and I was like, "Oh my God, this is perfect." So yeah,
Thank
it
you for
made my
that share.
weekend a little bit easier.
I love that story. And I feel like that is a really good example because to me, compassion, like you were saying, calling out empathy. I'm pretty sure the prefix com means with or something. So if we think about compassion, compassion is to have passion with someone, to share their emotions, to be in that space together, to cross-pollinate emotional energy as human beings, to really truly connect. And we can bring that to every human interaction we have. It doesn't matter if it's our clients, our coworkers. How can we make our relationships and our businesses more human and thus more humane? And that is how we develop sustainable and ethical businesses.
I love that. I saw a reel recently that I'm not taking credit for this. It was some other reel out there. It was this person was talking. This guy was narrating and saying how he was in the restroom and he watched this gentleman, very nicely dressed, everything else, suit, tie, everything else, so forth, wash his hands, and then he immediately went and grabbed a couple towels and he started to wipe down the area around the sink. And the person narrating said, you know, I looked at him and said, so how long you been working here? Trying to be smart, act like he was the janitor type person. And the person just looked back to him and said, you know, I found it's never wrong to try to leave a place just a little bit better than when you saw it.
I love that statement. One of my favorite things, and I hope that I always hit this mark, my personal work value is to leave people better than I found them. That is in any way that I possibly can. Leave people better than I found them. So whatever that means, in all of its forms. Even if it's just 1% better, it's better. Ingrid, we've got just a few more minutes. What are the top 3 things that you want people to take away today?
Oh gosh, I guess top 3 things, just knowing that you don't have to do this alone is the biggest one. Recognizing that there are a lot of things, many, many more than 3 that each of us could be doing. And if that we try to focus on all of those at the same time, we're going to get overwhelmed and potentially not do anything. So I would really recommend checking out the Accounting Alchemy Network, accountingalchemy.net, because we have very regular discussions and educational programs around these topics, and we have not monetized any of it. Everything that we're doing in there is currently free or by donation to one of our nonprofit partners, like the Pachamama Alliance. And there's some amazing conversations going on, like Matthew Fulton referred to his experience in our Jedi conversations this last year. And Jeanette Etienne, who's amazing, amazing DEI educator in the accounting space. If your business is needing a DEI consultant, like seriously, consider Jeanette. She is amazing. We're putting together curriculum on how we can have these kinds of conversations more effectively and create those more humane and ethical businesses. And also figuring out what is the change that you want to see in the world, because it's unique to each of us. What is important to you? And the conversations that we are having are not, aligned with any particular political party or anything like that. It's what do you believe in? Because when we start getting rid of the divisive marketing, essentially, that has put us on opposite sides of party lines, and we start looking at what's important to you and what's important to me, we find out that those things might be more similar than we think. And then we learn how to talk about them in more effective ways. And we want to empower your passion through the Accounting Alchemy Network by understanding what is the change that you want to see in the world and how can we support you in learning how to create that change through your work and your business. And yeah, accountingalchemy.net. And that's also what I consult with accountants on. And I love doing consulting with businesses around what does it look like to understand what are our values, what is our vision, mission, purpose, how do we make sure that those are coming through in our daily business choices. Those are all big things to be focused on. And yeah, if you haven't yet, look into Richard's Roundtable Labs community, because we're starting a new Empower Your Passion, and that's great too. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to continue these conversations, to participate actively, and you don't have to do it alone. So I think finding what those 3 things are is up to each of us.
So I have to say, when we first started this conversation off, I was feeling extremely overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, what are we going to be talking about here? And I was very uncomfortable. But I am truly amazed and impressed by how sticking around and listening to where this conversation went, how important it was and valuable it was. The number of people sticking around through social media stuff, watching as well and engaging. Thank you for everybody who just did. It demonstrates that these are the conversations that are necessary. You know, what we're trying to do is we say this whole blueprints for business. Of course, we'd like to have fun. And this to me was still a very fun and important conversation, but it's about the big picture that we can have all these kind of topics. So I really want to say thank you to everybody who contributed, everybody who was here today. You know, we've got another session coming up next month. Thank you again, Fordley, for providing us these opportunities. I mean, talk about ethical practices. Thank you. So that's a key part of it. So just wanted to thank everybody for being a part of it this week. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Richard, any last closing comments?
I want to say I had exactly the same experience that Matthew had. I didn't know how to approach the topic. I know, you know, Ingrid, you and I have worked together enough. I knew that we would be able to find a common path to conversation, but it was a topic that I truly was befuddled about. I wasn't understanding it. You made it easy to understand. There are a few twists and turns, but you made it easy to understand. And when we really broke it down to what it meant, it became crystal clear why it's important. So I want to thank you for doing the work that you're doing. You know, the Accounting Alchemy Network, for those of you that have not been, and I have not been, it sounds like a very important group to be a part of. I have watched 2 of your webinars. They were incredibly informative. You meet how often, Ingrid? You and Matthew host the Accounting Alchemy Network webinars. Is that once a week, once a month?
You know, we are developing it as a decentralized leadership model. So our upcoming webinar next week is being hosted by Liz Farr.
Nice. I saw that being
And
advertised.
she's talking about some amazing things in gender equity and has guests that I am really looking forward to hearing from.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Is there any resource or book that you would recommend for people to read? Ingrid, I think that's one of your calling cards. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you where you haven't referenced a book and made me put it on my list. And I have now a separate Ingrid list, just so you know, because there are.
Have you read any of them?
They're on Amazon.
I've read many of them, and I will tell you that The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist is my favorite of all the things that you've ever recommended to me. It has changed the very nature of the way that I look at money and what my relationship is with money. And I'm still working through some of it, but it is life-changing to read that book. So bravo to you. It took me 6 months after getting it on the list to read it, but is there, I'm sure that you have a reference material point that you would love to put out there. Please tell me I'm not barking up the wrong tree there.
You know, let's just keep it on The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist so that it's not getting overcomplicated, because that is a really good one to start with. And Lynn Twist is also one of the founders of the Pachamama Alliance. And so mentioned that several times on this call. She also has another book that just came out a year or 2 ago called, it's right on the top of my brain. And then I started thinking of another book. Living a Committed Life is her newer book, which is also fantastic. And she is a huge supporter of the Accounting Alchemy Alliance and what we're doing. And Pachamama Alliance even paid an advisor to come and help us with our theory of change. So yeah, we've got some really amazing support coming from many of the movements in the world. So great stuff going on there. And we would love to have each of your voices in the room. And like I said, it's a decentralized model. So it's an opportunity for you to step forward in creating whatever change you want to create. And we will support you in that stepping forward.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I have a very different perspective than I did an hour ago. And that's what these conversations are about. It was a great blueprint. And thank you for that.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody who joined us. And as always, here's wishing you all a very successful week.